Welcome back to the Too Much Hockey podcast presented by Kentwood Ford. I'm your host, Joshua Marshall, and we have a guest here waiting in the wing. This is his first time joining us on the Too Much Hockey podcast. You can find his work at sportsnet.ca. You can find him also on all the Flames coverage throughout the year. We like to welcome Eric Francis to the pod. Eric, how's it going?
I'm good. Thanks for having me, my man.
No, no,
This is good.
no. Yeah, no, finally got to do this and been able to kind of see you around the rink a lot more this year than usual. So it's been kind of cool. And you're one of the great guys that covers the game here, and you have a good pulse on a lot of things. And I guess before we get into kind of what happened the other night on Saturday night, I guess we'll go there first, and before we tee up tonight's game. But your kind of thoughts on kind of that game in a whole, obviously not getting the bounces, and you kind of had the great pictures that you posted on Twitter where the puck is just that close. But in all your years of covering the game, Eric, has you ever seen the team come unlucky the way this group has in terms of unfavorable calls or little bounces not going their way?
Yeah, it's tough. Well, first of all, thanks for the kind words and thanks for having me on. Um, I wouldn't like historically, I wouldn't try to put it in perspective like how unlucky they've been. It just really does stand out to me that everything from the run that St. Louis has gone on, that's just unfortunate for the Calgary Flames. There's nothing they can do about that. Minnesota now starting to try to pull it together, but in game, that's four straight video reviews that they've lost that have gone against them, and I really think that if you ask people, they'd probably say at least two of the four they think should have gone in the Flames' favor. And I'm not even throwing shade at the video review room. I do believe that they do a pretty good job, but it's just frustrating for the Flames that they were millimeters away from, in two separate cases, that goal crossing the line and changing the games completely. Like, they've only lost two regulation games in their last 10, and both of those regulation losses came with significantly unfortunate, video reviews that could have changed the game in their favor. So, uh, unfortunate for the Flames, a lot of bad bounces, but I think Dustin Wolf, all the players, they've all acknowledged that. They said, like, yeah, it's getting frustrating, but that just means that we're due. And with 6 games remaining, they're hoping to cash in on the fact that they are due for some good bounces and some good luck.
Yeah, and you've been covering this team for a while. Would you say this is probably the closest group of players you've seen in quite some time? Maybe there's some cup runs
Yeah.
and whatnot there, long playoff runs, but for the here and now, what's your thoughts on how close this group is? Because just from the point of view I get the odd time that I'm there, it definitely feels like that as aspect. But you're there every single day and on the road too, so get your thoughts.
Yeah. The only team that was as close as this was the team that went to the Stanley Cup final in '04. And I think they got to the Stanley Cup final because they cared so much about each other. They did everything they could for their fellow teammate, whether it's a shot block or an extra, whatever the effort entailed, they would come up with it. So, I think they're managed to, they're kind of trying to do something that they did in '04, which is shock the world. No, nobody's expecting anything from this blue collar team, and yet they've gone on to stay in a race that nobody thought they could. And that's similar to '04. And then what they did, was beyond anyone's expectations in '04. Yeah, these guys they absolutely love each other. They've embraced that underdog mentality, and they look at one another and they say, look, nobody else thinks we can do it, but I think you can do it, and I think I can do it. So let's prove everybody we can do it together. It's pretty cool. There's a lot of love in that room for one another. Yes, for sure.
There is, and it's great to see it's in the aspect of the hockey world and kind of what they're down to six games, and they still have that strong belief in themselves that they can do this. And you hinted at it earlier, or said it earlier, is that the fact they've only lost 2 games in regulation in their last 10, and there's no reason to think that they can't go 6-0 in their next six, and then maybe see what
Well,
happens.
there's one reason why they can't go 6-0. That's Vegas. That
Yeah,
Vegas is coming back to Calgary,
yeah,
and they've really struggled against Vegas. I mean, everybody has over the last handful of years, but that's a massive impediment in their way. But yeah, sorry, I had to interject there just because,
no, you're right.
and I'm not sure anyone thinks they will go 6-0. But certainly the next couple of games are easily winnable if they keep playing. The big thing is, Joshua, to me, like, they're playing the best hockey of the year when it matters most. And that means something to me too. Whatever happens with this team, whether they make the playoffs or not, like I think this has been a tremendously successful year by any metric. I thought this whole season was going to be measured just basically on growth on this team, but more so growth, with guys like Zane Parekh and some of their prospects. But it ended up being measured on wins and losses because they're almost going to get into the playoffs. But my point is, they've built something really special in that dressing room, and there's a belief in this room and a real positivity moving forward that even if they don't make the playoffs and they lose that first round draft pick as part of the Monahan trade and all these things, I still think it's been a really successful year compared to what I think a lot of people thought they might be capable of in terms of growth and in terms of their standing.
Yeah, and I think in a couple of years, I agree to that, Eric, because I think in a couple of years we're going to hear some of them talking about that. Some of the younger guys, some of
Yeah.
the guys that are on this team. I think you'll definitely hear it from Connie and obviously Huska too, in terms of going back to this point of this season and this season in a whole. And who knows to see what happens in these next 6 games, but you're right. There can only be an added boost for them in terms of their growth moving forward, development on and off the ice for that. So great point there in terms of talking about that, because I definitely agree there. Dustin Wolf has been amazing all year. He's been everything that we kind of thought we were going to get in terms of, as fans and observers of the game, because what he's done at every level. And he's maybe surprised some, but the group that's kind of been around that area in terms of what he's seen done at the Wranglers level in the AHL and now at the NHL. I know he kind of had a quote after the game and just the belief, and you're probably right in terms of what we were talking about before on camera, is that maybe it was just the strong belief that probably he has in the group of going that way. He might not have used that as a full Mark Messier guarantee. And the reason why I bring that up is because obviously he's a big Quick fan. And we all seen that video of Jonathan Quick when the Sharks are up 3-0 and Quick just went down the Kings bench and said whatever he has said. A few players have told me in the past kind of what he has said, but not quoting it to a degree. But they didn't lose another game. Obviously, the Kings went to win the Stanley Cup, and I'm not saying that is going to happen here. But if they do get in, that moment of just the belief you have. But what's your thoughts? Long-winded question. What's your thoughts on Dustin Wolf in a whole, and the belief that he has in himself, but also this core of this group?
Yeah, like the kid's not, he might be short in stature, but he's not short on confidence, right?
Yeah,
Coming into the organization, he had a boatload of it, and it's only increased, as it should this year after he's proven that size is not an issue. There's really no issue. He's a star in the league already, and I think he's trending towards superstardom. He's almost single-handedly carried this team on his back to a playoff spot. And to your point, yeah, after the game the other night, he did say, "We're going to get in." And I generally, when an athlete says that, that's the headline, that's the big story, that somebody's bold enough to stick their neck out and say with some great proclamation like that. But I also I didn't make a big deal of it because I also thought it's just part of his nonstop, non-negotiable belief in himself and this team. And I didn't think it was right to put the pressure on him that, he said this and now he's got to back it up. That's another thing about this team. Like, they're playing in the most pressure packed moments right now. And there's no sign of fear, from Dustin Wolf or they haven't lost the game because they're getting too tense or because they're too nervous or because the moment's too big. He's already living up to all the hype and coming through when it matters most. Like, if that's not the definition of a future superstar, I'm really not sure what it is. So yeah,
yeah.
he believes himself, and why wouldn't he? He's that good.
Yeah. Move over to the back end and kind of work our way up there in terms of what you're seeing from this back end throughout this year, and obviously led by Mackenzie Weegar, and coming that close to being on Team Canada at the Four Nations, and definitely heavy in conversations to making the Olympic team here. I know there's some other show around that might have said something different about what they think of his play, but I know you're bullish on it. I am too, and he's a great leader on the ice, in the room, and as we know, in the community as well too. But led by him and the rest of that back end, what's your thoughts on kind of what he's been able to do? And that pairing with Joel Hanley has been really good since it got going as well too.
Yeah, I mean, you go into the season, the reason why there were so many questions around the goaltending, which ended up being their biggest strength, but it was their biggest question going into the season, was, they lost Noah Hannafin. They lost Chris Tanev last year. You really only had two known entities going into the season, Mackenzie Weegar and Rasmus Anderson. I'm not even sure you were sure that Rasmus Anderson could be that guy on your top pairing to shut teams down. And, I think he's had a pretty good year that way. Weegar's had a phenomenal year, but they filled in the gaps between those guys so well. Kevin Ball's come and been every bit as good as they'd ever hoped he would be playing on the top pairing. He's like a mainstay for the next 10 years as a shutdown defender. Joel Hanley stepped in. Nobody expected. He was a healthy scratch the first 2 months. And now he's playing. He started overtime the other night in the biggest game of the year. Like, unbelievable how far he's come. Braden Pahal's really stepped up. And then that fifth spot has kind of been filled by committee, Jake Bean and other guys, Mir Manoff and such. So yeah, they've done a great job. I think they're top 5 or 10, certainly top 10 in the league in against, goals against, and that's a credit to the blue line that nobody was really sure about. So full marks to all those guys, but especially Uyghur. Look, I still think he should have been on Team Canada. I think I'll be interested to see if he goes to the World Championships this year, because if he does, that keeps his chances alive and
Yeah.
maybe going to the Olympics next year. He's been that good to me. He's got the versatility in the overall game that not many defensemen could bring, so that he could be your seventh defenseman and go in any role you wanted him to. Shut down, you want him to hit guys, you want him to run a power play. He can do all that stuff. So yeah, speak very highly of Uyghur, especially.
Yeah, he's got a lot of game. And would you say he probably should be paid more than what he is? Obviously, he's probably happy with his contract, but for the going rate of what a defenseman like that can get, in terms of 20 goals recently of last season. I'm not trying to negotiate more money. I thought it was pretty cool on the after hours segment. I watched it when I got home, and Murray Edgeworth was saying, oh, we'll name the arena Weegs Arena, but as long as you give your contract back. But so I thought that was pretty funny. But just in terms of, I guess in a whole, like you touched on a lot of it there, but I thought it was, what you see from what that guy can bring you. It's a pretty good contract for the Flames, knowing that the cap's going to go up too.
Yeah, it's a good deal. You got him locked in for 8 years. I mean, it was crucial for Brad Treliving to lock up Huberdeau and/or Uyghur, but probably both. And yes, Huberdeau didn't work out early on the way you'd hoped, and I'm not sure it'll ever, live. Obviously, it's not going to live up to the $10.5 million. But Huberdeau's been one of their most important players this year. So you couldn't afford to let those guys go after what you gave up to get them. You can't let go of Matthew Tkachuk and then 2 years later have neither of those guys in your lineup. Like, anyone who criticizes Tree Living for signing Huberdeau is just dead wrong. He had to pay that market price to keep the guy in town. Otherwise, you risk losing him and really getting crushed on the deal. So it's going to work out long term for Uyghur. I think he's the captain. I think he's the next captain of this team. When Backham retires, I really do think that he's going to. I think he's going to be the captain of this team, and he deserves to be. So the contract to me
Yeah.
is still a pretty good one.
Yeah, you hear a lot of the good things he kind of does when the new guys get traded to. He's really going out of his way, and not saying Backlund isn't. We know, he would be and is doing it, but yeah, just in the text, making sure they're set up and feeling comfortable when they're coming to that city. But yeah, I think he's awesome. I think he's been, for what we've seen at first into what he is now. I think it's been a good fit, and obviously that connection between him and Huska is really good too, and getting the most as they possibly can out of him has been really good to kind of see. But I'm a big fan of the Rune Dog, Eric. So I think what he's done in that fourth line in the hole is done. And I think there's a chance that we could even see Klapka maybe being what Protas is in Washington at some point. We never know. But what's your thoughts on kind of that fourth line and what they've been able to bring since the Four Nations break here?
Yeah, I mean, Lomberg's brought so many more intangibles than just that dog on a bone out on the ice. I mean, he kind of calms things down too when the temperature rises. He kind of lets the other team know, okay, boys, better slow down or you're gonna have to answer to me. I love what he's brought. Rune Dog's a stabilizing force in the middle, as you call him, Rune Dog, as everybody likes to call him. But Klopka to me is the one with the big upside. Like if the Calgary Flames get to a point this year where they're playing meaningless games, like if mathematically they're eliminated, I'd like to see Klopka up on the top line. I thought he looked good. He only played like a parts of one game with Kadri, but it helped turn around a crucial game this season by just going to the net. I would love to see him get a more prominent role where he can flourish offensively. He's the leading scorer all time for the Wranglers. I know that doesn't really mean much more than he spent a lot of time down there, but the point is he has led that team in scoring. So he has the capability offensively of putting up some numbers. I can't imagine he could score 30 goals like Protas. That's incredible.
Yeah.
That I'm not putting that ceiling on him. But if he could get 15 goals, or if he plays in the top six role, maybe 20 goals, and cause havoc in front of the net, like he's one of the most intriguing players on this team right now because we still don't know exactly, you know, how high that ceiling is for him. It's an interesting way of putting it because he's 6'8". But I'm fascinated by him more than probably any player on this roster right now. Now next year it'll be different. Suniev is going to be a guy I'd be intrigued with. Perek is obviously going to be the number one focal point next year. But in terms of the guys on this roster right now, no one intrigues me more than Klapka.
Yeah, yeah, very well said. There's another guy I want to move over to, and you kind of it tied it into the questions the other day with Huska in terms of Blake Coleman, and I know, and you brought it up too. It's like he's had half the goals that he did last year, but your question to Huska was, I think, was awesome in terms of he still means as much to that team. Your thoughts on what Coleman has brought this group for the on the ice performance, but also in terms of what he's been able to do with helping guys like bringing along guys like Klapka and others.
Yeah, I doubt there's a more popular guy in that dressing room than Blake Coleman.
Hmm.
And I'll lump him in with that leadership group that the coach is always referring to, the players refer to. Guys like Coleman and Backlund, Huberto, Uyghur, Asmus Anderson, like these veterans, they had set the bar. And from day one, they went out and had a dinner and said, like, we're going to set the bar and it's not negotiable. We're going to have the greatest work ethic in the league. And that's not negotiable. We're going to play a defensive style. That's not they set the tone for this whole season to happen. And I think Blake Coleman's a massive part of that. And if you're going to win games largely on work ethic and defensive play, like who's the poster boy on the Calgary Flames for defensive play, responsible play, and work ethic? Like it's Blake Coleman and selfless play. Like he'll block any shot. And he is. I know general managers have said to me, like, give me 18 Blake Colemans and I'll win a Stanley Cup.
Yeah.
And I don't know if that is, doable. If you could just have 18 guys like him that can, because you do need stars, you do need role players. But I think the point is, if you had your prototypical player that you could add, it would be a Blake Coleman. I'll be interested to see if he extends his time in Calgary after this, because I think he's earned certainly another significant paycheck after this contract ends. And I think the Calgary Flames would be very interested in keeping him here for a long time.
Yeah, and it's that whole Pavel Datsyuk kind of thing where he might get you 50 points, but he also prevents you getting 50 against you too.
Yeah, yeah.
I just think it's like he had so many plays on Saturday night, which he has every night. It's just not a Saturday night thing, but just those back checks, sticks in the lanes, reading the plays. Sometimes it's hard to teach hockey sense at times. It's there or it's kind of not there. And I think he has, if anything, probably one of the highest hockey IQs. I know Blake Fiddler, Blake Fiddler with the Oil Kings skates with him in Dallas in the summertime, and he just speaks glowingly about him. And the Fiddler family really like him a lot too. So I thought it was really cool to kind of just see there, and you're giving him that respect and that, and then Huska kind of reiterating that in the post game. All right, let's get to tonight's game. We have a few more before we get out here, but tonight's matchup, kind of what are your keys to tonight's win, and how do the Flames pull out the 2 points here in San Jose?
Just keep playing the way they're playing. It should be, I don't want to say it should be an easy victory, because I really do believe when the coach and other people say there's no easy win in the NHL these days, like there's so much parity and there's a hungry young team. They're all fighting for jobs, and, led by Celebrini, who's one, I think, is a future superstar. He's already a star. And But this Flames team has done a good job. In past years, they've played down to their opponents way too much and lost games. I remember last year they lost, a big reason why they didn't make the playoffs last year is because they lost every single game they played against the Chicago Blackhawks, the worst team in the league. So, this year that they didn't allow that to happen. And I think that they realize that, if they lose tonight or to Anaheim on Wednesday, like it's deadly. Like it probably would be the end of the season. So these are must wins, and they're wins that they should have. So just keep playing the way they're playing, and then they should win this game. I don't want to say no problem, but they should win.
Yeah. Last one before we get you out. What's your thoughts on Ryan Huska and the rest of his staff and what they've been able to do? And if you can give them any kind of grade, what would it be in terms of what we've seen and witnessed with this coaching staff this year?
Well, I think Huska, helps set the tone with the general manager, but what's expected, how they're going to play, and all that. And he's a real player-friendly coach. He worked in collaboration with that leadership group I talked about, and that's I just think that's been the formula for his success. He's listened to his players. He still is the boss, but he listens to their input and he takes it at face value and he integrates it when he thinks it's important. So I give them a B plus for sure. Uh, if you get them into the playoffs, I got to give you an A. Like the fact that they've got this team playing this well, this late, and they're really not as skilled as most teams in the race. I got to give the coaching staff a huge tap. And Huska's got one more year left on his deal next year, and I have no doubt in my mind that at the end of this season, they'll sit down and they'll forge a future together and sign him to another 2-year extension, 3-year extension. I think he's earned it.
Yep.
And I'm sure he's one of the lowest paid coaches in the league, and that's fair because they gave him a shot. And I'm not saying he's going to be one of the highest paid. I still think he'll be one of the lower paid, but he's earned an extension for sure because of what he's done this year, no question. I'm going to stop sort of saying he should be in the Jack Adams, conversation. Like I think he should be in the conversation. Him, Marty St. Louis, but Spencer Carberry is going to walk away with that in a landslide for what he's done in Washington, if you ask me.
Correct. I agree.
But put Husk on a list of 4 or 5 guys that need to be in that conversation at the very least, because he's done what nobody thought could be done in Calgary, which is keep them in a race.
Yeah, yeah, and like you said earlier too, the connection that him and Conroy have, and it's pretty clear those two work well together, and they work well with that veteran group and also the young players coming up, and there's some good ones coming up in the system. So, Eric, appreciate the time. Enjoy the game tonight and the rest of the week here, and hopefully we'll see you soon. I don't know when, but I'm sure at some point we'll connect. It's they make the playoffs, then I'll be back, but we'll see how it goes. So,
well, I was going to throw that back at you and say, okay, I'm going to put you on the spot. You've asked me all the questions.
Yeah.
Will the Calgary Flames make the playoffs? Will I see you at the Dome in the playoffs?
You know what? We did an article. My writing isn't the greatest, but I did an article at the start of the year, and I said that they will make it. And
really?
Yeah. So Backlund's dad actually reached out and liked it too. So it was, somehow it got back to Sweden, which I did say at the start that they would, and I have to stay firm in that. I think they will. I know they need some help. I know that was a tough loss with Minnesota, but I think they will. But hey, I'm probably the most homer biased in this because of what this organization's done for me off the ice in terms of helping me out. But just in the general of a good story, and just the fact that these guys just don't give up. Like it's sometimes it could be the hardest thing going into a room after a loss, and just I left that room on Saturday when we did the press conference that, I was like, they're just not done. They just like, I don't know. I was texting with the player a little bit yesterday and they still believe it. And it's really cool to kind of see. And, it's just, they're still there. And that, like you're there more than I am. And how do you not walk out if that's how they feel, they're, and that rink was jumping. That rink was lively the other night, and like it was like when Hanley scored, it got it going again, and I agree with Pat Steinberg said on the way home is if Backlund scores in that play at the end, like the roof on the dome is done. Like
Yeah.
they're playing at the new rink already. So yeah,
Yeah,
but
I
yeah,
agree.
yeah,
And it's funny you say like the atmosphere in the city, like this team is really, endeared itself. Like the fans love that. You can't not love this team if you live in Calgary. You can't sit there and tell me a reason why you think they don't deserve your respect at the very least. But also, you mentioning, I felt that same way leaving that dressing room that night. Like, it's always quiet in the room after a loss. It's
yeah,
quiet after a win because all the players make themselves scarce.
yeah,
But I just got that feeling too that look, I don't think they're going to make the playoffs. I
yeah,
don't. It's
yeah,
too much room, too much space that they have to make up. Plus, they're probably going to lose the tiebreaker. Like I just don't think so.
yeah,
But that doesn't matter. I still just think that it's just really impressive how optimistic and full of belief and optimism these guys are still have even after that loss. That was a crushing loss for them for sure.
yeah. It was because right when we came in, Wolf was still in his stall, and then obviously we he came out to us last, but just in the way you and him were interacting in terms of the questions and the answers, I think it was more him, and then obviously Joel was the same way, and then obviously the captain comes out to set the tone in terms of it too in the press conference. So we'll see. I agree. It's not going to be easy. It's going to be, you're going to have to ask for some real good hockey gods to help you. And maybe this is the time where they help you because maybe they weren't before, but,
Yeah.
it's not easy. But again, no one thought they'd be here at this point, and they are. And that's a win in itself, too, as you said earlier in the pod. So,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. Well, thanks for having me on, and I do hope I'm wrong, and I do hope I see you at the rink
Oh,
real soon, buddy.
yeah, exactly. All right. Well, we'll chat very soon, and all the best to you and your family. And thanks again for doing the community work. When I think of community work, I know I probably didn't say it as much to you in person, but I was telling this to my co-host Phil Stockley, who is a big Flames fan, but he were just talking about you the other day, and he goes that you set the tone for the market in terms of the giving back and the things that you've done, with these coaches that have been there and the players. So I genuinely mean that. And, a guy like me to get to meet you and talk to you, it means a lot. And I think what you do for the city of Calgary and the players, the organization is really awesome, Eric. So continue that great work.
Wow, man. Thank you for saying that. It's very kind of you. Very kind. I love this city, and the minute I moved here 30 years ago, I fell in love with it and was thrilled that I would get a chance to give back. In bigger cities, you don't get a chance to
Yeah.
kind of make a difference. But here, I felt like there was always that opportunity. And so many people feel that way. That's why we have such a great community because people all feel like they can make a difference. So they do.
Yeah.
So good for you. And you do the same thing. So thanks, man. I appreciate that.
Thank you. Great way to end a good pod. So all the best, and enjoy the nice weather too. I finally got
Yeah, you too. Cheers. Thanks, man. We'll see you soon.